Yep, I got lead in this pencil. Okay. Hey, I gotta make sure. I mean, if I'm gonna be taking notes, I want to come in prepared.
And where did you get your law degree, sir? Cracker Jack box?
I got my law degree from the University of the Internet, so...
Welcome, everyone, to a special episode. Hopefully this becomes a main series. Let us know what you think. This is called Snupsters Debate. We are now going to talk about Double Dragon for the NES. We are going to have Candy Bars attack the game, and we're going to have Altima defend the game. Afterwards, I will allow them to cross-examine each other, and then have a phase for rebuttal, after which I will then make my decision based on the arguments that they have made, regardless of how I personally feel about the game. And that's how I will award a winner. They won't get anything for it.
Respect. There's always respect.
No, there's no respect. We're talking about Double Dragon here.
Double Dragon is a great game.
No, Altima, you'll have your turn.
Okay.
Well, before we get started, I would like to point out that I actually do enjoy the Nintendo version of Double Dragon. It was one of the first games that I ever actually bought with my own money as a child. I remember following the development of it in Nintendo Fun Club News and later Nintendo Power, and I was just so excited to get it. And that was one of the big landmark games for me because I could actually go out and spend my own money to buy it. So I actually do like this game, even though I am in the negative, but understand that I've loved Double Dragon ever since the arcade, and I probably spent untold thousands of dollars on the original in the arcade. Actually, probably hundreds, because back then you could play for a quarter.
Congratulations, episode's over. All right, well, we'll get down to the point, or not point. What's the point? Oh, fuck.
I'm Altima, and Harambe was framed.
Hello, I'm Candy Bars, and I am part of the Dicks Out for Harambe movement.
Me too.
I'm Fellon, and I have no idea where I'm going to be in this video. I'm over here. I'm over here. I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. I'm here. Good luck editing that, Nico.
Nico will probably just stuff you in the bottom and be like, Judge Fellon presiding.
Put him in a very tiny box. A really tiny box.
Hey, I can get out of this box. There's holes here, see? You know what? The last time you leave me breathing holes in a box allows me to escape. I will give 2 minutes to Candy to make his opening statements against Double Dragon. I would then allow Altima to cross-examine the statements made, in which he will then afterwards make defense of the game, and then Candy will be allowed to counter against that statement, after which there will be a further rebuttal, and then closing statements. Alright, I will now be giving the floor to Candy. Altima, please do not interrupt. Now.
Okay, well, when Double Dragon was first announced for the Nintendo, I followed it, like I said, really close in Nintendo Fun Club News and later in Nintendo Power, and from the beginning, they advertised the game as a direct port to the arcade title, which I love the arcade title, I knew a lot about it, so I had really high hopes for this game when it first came out. As much as I liked the game, I was really disappointed when I saw the level design. The level design in the arcade game is very continuous. It all flows from one stage to the other. There's no break in between. And the Nintendo game not only put breaks between all of the different missions, they also got stages in there that weren't in the arcade game. I don't know why they felt the need to put like the cave stuff in there and the platform jumping and all that crap, but I didn't see any need for that, especially because it's made the game really difficult. Character size was an issue for me. I don't know why they felt the need to put that stupid two-player mode in there with the big characters only to give you the really small ones during the game. I would rather have seen them remove the two-player version altogether just to put more memory towards the actual game itself. Maybe make the sprites a little more detailed, a little bigger. The move list. If you're familiar with the arcade game, you have all of your moves from the beginning to the very end. You don't have this thing in the Nintendo like you have in the Nintendo game where it's a structured thing. You know, the more points you get, the more moves you unlock, and the more powerful you become. It just didn't make any sense to me. And I thought the controls were a tad irresponsive in the game. It's made it really easy for enemies to gang up on you, and then just your control inputs would get eaten up every time you would get hit. I just thought it was a really poor showing on the part of Trade West to bring the game to the home port. You can't take your weapons from one section to the next. You can't use all your moves from the beginning. All the characters are really small and look really similar, even though in the arcade game they do look kind of similar as well. I just kind of felt like they did a poor job of displaying the variety that was available in the arcade game. So that's what I think.
All right, Altima.
All right. So, first I'd like to point out you're talking about a direct port here. As we know, over time, port doesn't literally mean the exact same thing. You're looking at different hardware specs, you're looking at different limitations. So, obviously, you're talking about they streamlined every level. That's not going to be possible in something as simplistic as a Nintendo as compared to an arcade cabinet, which is custom made for a game. They make the games, the boards, everything is usually tailored to that game. Whereas with a console, you have things that are already preset within the box itself that they have to go with. So trying to streamline all the levels as one level might have been too much, so they had to divide it into missions. As for the character size and the detail, there's a lot going on with the NES in the single player, or rather in the story mode, as I should say, mode A. You have more characters on screen, that's more things for the NES to deal with, and with bigger detailed sprites, that's more memory and resources that the game eats up. Thus, they left it for the two-player mode, so you still get those nice detailed sprites, but, having to go through with, the limited RAM and stuff like that of the NES, they had to do downgraded, watered-down sprites. Which, that doesn't take away from the overall experience of the game, it just allows the game to run on that particular hardware.
You want to do it in a timely manner.
Obviously, yeah. Let me know when I'm good to start there, Mr. Judge Fellon.
You are good to go.
Alright. So the things about Double Dragon that really stick out, yes, there was an arcade version, but bringing it to the home was a big task. And they give you a lot. They gave you 4 stages, each one longer than the last one and more rewarding. They ramp up in difficulty as, you would expect a video game to do. And they had a really nice score-based system. So as you progress through the game, you feel like you're being rewarded for good gameplay or for doing good. So like you get, 1 heart, you've got like your punch, your kick, your jump and your headbutt. With your second heart, you get like an uppercut and a roundhouse kick, all the way down to your 6th and 7th hearts, which give you things like tackles and a jumping roundhouse kick, which is a really cool ability. Then you have the graphics and the music. The music is so memorable, people will hum that. You hear it and you think, that's Double Dragon, And while there isn't a whole lot of music, because there's 4 stages, every track in that game leaves some sort of mental impression on you. They even included weapons in the game. You have a whip, you have a ball bat, there's daggers, there's some, guys that throw dynamite at you. And so it gives you something either to pick up or some way, something to learn to avoid, giving the enemies a bit more versatility than just coming out and throwing punches and kicks or, ganging up on you ruthlessly. There was a versus mode, which, you could have 1 or 2 players. And in the versus mode, you picked a character and you basically duked it out. You could even go against the computer in the versus mode. So you didn't have to have another person. But if you did, not only could you do 2 players in the versus mode, but you could take it to the story mode, have a friend with you, go through the levels, fight the gang together, and hopefully at the end you would reach Machine Gun Willie. And then there was a Bobo, who became so legendary that it got his own video game spin-off. How cool is that?
Was it? All right.
Oh, I am so ready for you.
All right. Candy, you may now proceed to cross-examine.
All right, you mentioned that, due to the memory constraints and everything, that they made the game more streamlined. They made the levels more complex. How is that streamlining it? they really didn't do anything to simplify the game. By adding another level and adding the climbing dynamic and everything else, they actually made it more complex. Really, I think any memory that's spent on the two-player game is memory wasted, because when you play the versus mode, first of all, you can only play same character versus same character. Even if you're playing against a computer, you can only play Willie versus Willie or Billy versus Billy and so on and so forth. You can't change it up. And they're not really that different. There's a few different moves, but there's really not any point in it, I don't think. I just felt like it was kind of wasted. You mentioned being rewarded for good gameplay. When talking about the increase of the levels, you can just about trace down to the same one or two enemies where you're going to get that advance every time you play, because it's based on your points. And you're going to kill the same number of enemies every time you play the game anyway. So there's not really much of a reward there. And it comes to the biggest problem of the game overall. You talked about dragging your friend to the game. You can't do it together. That is the biggest downfall of the game on Nintendo. You can only play as a one player through the story mode. You can't do it simultaneously, and I think that alone was enough to kill it as an arcade port, really even as a home port.
All right.
So yeah.
Anything else?
That's all I got for that.
I will let you proceed to have rebuttal.
Okay.
Altima?
Oh, is it me first?
Yeah, you're now arguing against the
points that he made.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, you're talking about the more complex levels here and adding new things. Well, why not try something new if it's not going to be a direct port? Allow the ability to climb, expand on just a straight line. You're looking at appealing to an audience of potentially younger children than what might be found at an arcade. So, give more complicated levels, allow climbing, and other things such as that, so that way it feels like you have some semblance of a location. While the arcade port, I'm sure, has a semblance of location, not everything is streamlined, so give it different feeling in the environments. And with the versus mode, not allowing other people, and not being able to allow
character?
Using the same character, and for the 2 players thing, that may be either rush production or it could just be rush production, or again hardware limitations. The NES isn't exactly the most powerful thing, and sometimes it's a miracle that thing even ran.
Closing statements. Candy.
The game itself was actually a slam dunk for the Nintendo system, but I think it failed on what they had promised, an arcade port. And back in the 1980s, when you said it was an arcade port, people kind of expected it to be an arcade port. They don't know what we know now, and they don't have the benefit of that. The 2-player simultaneous mode, not having that was a real killer for me. My favorite version of the home port was actually the Sega Genesis version, which did allow 2 players at the same time. So while obviously it was a huge hit for the Nintendo, I think they kind of failed on their promise. That's really all I have to say about it.
Altima.
Alright, well, I think here we're looking at a game that it gained enough popularity to continue the franchise, bringing, a couple more games to the NES, and even spawning some other games, and popularizing the genre, I feel. I mean, you got River City Ransom come in right after that, so obviously the popularity was something to be noted, and if people like a game, that obviously means it's going to be something worth playing, and it's going to draw some attention, and it's going to draw and expand that particular genre, and I think Double Dragon did an amazing job at bringing people's attention to that.
Okay, so first things first, I will have to disregard most of the comments made in regards to the Sega Master System, as this is an argument for the...
Oh, that wasn't even intended to be, in that was just an off-the-record comment. That wasn't part to be...
The point of the argument here is to argue in favor of the Double Dragon on the NES. It takes its source material from the arcade game, which has Valen points. When you are marketing the game, as such to an audience, you will obviously use things like an arcade port. Most people who know what ports are do realize that an inferior system such as the NES cannot come anywhere close to that of an arcade machine. So most of the points that Altima made at the beginning are null and void, as it should be common knowledge now. The key points that were made by Candy in regards to the moves, not having them right at the very beginning, I definitely think that they could have done something in that respect of opening up the moves a bit. I do agree that it's sort of a leveling progression on the sense of as you go through the game, it gives you something new to do, so it's not a stagnant same punch, kick from the first level all the way to the last level. However, I do believe that there would be ways for the game to be able to implement that without having to resort to the way they've done it. So I'll give a point to Candy in that regard. The leveling streaming, in other words, from the original arcade to the NES, again, I can't really use that as you're comparing the arcade machine to the NES. But I can say that the level progression from one level to the other could have been a bit more streamlined, so to speak. You know, in the way that the NES did it, you just literally exited a warehouse and appeared in a mountain range somewhere. So I'll give a point to Candy in the sense that the levels could have been done a bit better in terms of making it feel like you're moving from one area to the next. The two-player mode, being that it probably did not need to be included. We're talking about the tournament mode or the head-to-head mode.
Yes.
I will give Candy a point for that, because as much fun as that was to go up against a friend, I would have preferred that the game itself actually implemented that into the actual single-player campaign, which also nullifies the playing the game as the same character in the two-player mode. It would have been nicer to be able to choose different characters, such as a Bobo versus Billy or something like that. The sort of false advertising statement that Candy made in regards to the promotional material, I do agree in the sense that it wasn't as faithful to the original material, but based on the porting of the system, being that it goes from an arcade to a Nintendo game, they did try to stick with the original formula. And in many regards, Ultima is right that what they injected into the NES to make it stand out from the arcade, with the ladders and things like that, it definitely makes it feel like more of a Nintendo game and not an arcade game. So I will give a point to that. For Ultima, weapons definitely did mix up the game a bit, in the sense that, like Ultima said, that you don't go through the stage and beat up the same kind of enemies over and over and over. Weapons do add variety to the game, so there's a point for Ultima. The incorrect statement about going through the single-player game as two players, unfortunately, Ultima, unfortunately, you are incorrect there, so I do have to take a point away from that statement. In terms of the game being able to spawn sequels such as Double Dragon 2, I will agree with that. It was very well done for the first game of the series that it was able to spawn a sequel. And
two sequels.
Those are two sequels, but the third one unfortunately was...
Nobody talks about Double Dragon 3.
Yeah, so I'm gonna stick to Double Dragon 2 for this particular argument.
Double Dragon 3 is the creepy uncle at the family reunion that nobody talks about.
Pretty much. But this isn't about Double Dragon 3 or Double Dragon 2. It's about Double Dragon 1. And so, in all, without my personal feelings towards the game, I will have to actually award the points in terms of argument to Candy.
Can't see it, but I'm pumping my fist in the air right now.
I'm sorry, Altima. Better defense.
Internet law degree wins again.
I told you it was that internet law degree, man.
It's the internet law degree. Now, my decision is final. Candy wins in defense of Double Dragon, the original, being a bad game. But let's discuss this further in the comment section below. Do you feel that I'm wrong to defend Candy? Do you agree with the decision, the choices, the arguments that were made by Candy? Do you agree with Altima? Let us know what you think in the comment section below. Who do you think should have won this argument?
I would like to say that I was glad I got to debate Altima on this, because in the family of Snupster, Altima is the eternal optimist, and I knew if anyone could come up with a good-spirited defense of the game, it would be him.
I gave him a best. I'm not that super familiar with Double Dragon, and I had to play it a little bit and watch a couple of videos. God, I can't beat that game. But, you know, it is. I mean, I feel like I gave a good-spirited defense on it for, you know, the bit of knowledge that I do have on it.
And I will say this, the one point you will never ever catch me arguing on is the music in the Nintendo game was amazing. It was actually better than the arcade music.
I forgot to mention that I did give Ultima a point for the music. It still wasn't enough to save him from Candy's statements.
Well, we hope you guys enjoyed watching our very first Snupsters debate. If there's any games you'd like us to see, if there's any games you'd like to see us debate, please list them in the comments below. Send them suggestions to our website. Always interested for more ideas. Let us know what you think. And tell us what you think about the Double Dragon for Nintendo in the comments section.
Yeah.
Let us know what you think about this episode as a whole. Should we continue this?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff as well.
If you like this series, just let us know. We will keep debating different games, I guess. If you like something, leave it in the comments. If you want to talk more about it, just, leave us comments. So